very much for having come to share in this moment in time with Cindy and I, as well as being together as a family. It's with profound sadness that we announce the passing of Beverly Ann Fernandez Hungerford, who was 81, of Trussville, Alabama, on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022. Our loving and devoted mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and friend was born in Waycross, Georgia, April 11th, 1941, the daughter of Nani June and Vincent Daniel Fernandez. She was preceded in death by her parents, one son, Jerry Dennis Tribble Jr. of Dunedin, Florida, and her husband of 54 years, William Ann Hungerford. Beverly leaves her son and his wife, William and Heidi Hungerford of Palm Harbor, Florida, her daughter, Cindy T. Carson of Kenneth City, Florida, two grandsons, Sean and his wife, Amanda Carson of St. Petersburg, Florida, and Ashton Hungerford of Palm Harbor, Florida, and two great-grandchildren, Elijah and Matilda Carson of St. Petersburg, Florida. My mother loved to learn, and we all know this. She actively saw each of her children through college in her 40s and 50s, while her peers were happy homemakers. Her passion was learning and preserving the social culture of the Polynesian indigenous people from the period of 700 to 1595 AD. She dabbled in needlework and thoroughly enjoyed the internet. Her world revolved around her husband, and upon his passing took solace in caring for her beloved dog, Honey. She greatly loved and was so proud of her entire family, and she instilled in them strong values that have served each of us very well. Her absence in our world has left a void where she will be dearly missed and forever in our hearts. So there is a verse in the Bible book of Ecclesiastes at chapter 7 and verse 1 that may seem to be a very strange statement to some readers. It says, "A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth." Now, how can that be? How can death be better than life? Well, if we had a choice, would we not prefer to be at the beginning of our life rather than coming to its end? Well, understand a custom in ancient Israel at the time when this verse was penned. When a household lost a loved one in death, their dwelling became a house of mourning. It was the custom for friends and neighbors to come and offer condolences. The most consoling thought would be that the day of the death of this loved one would be better than the day of his birth if he had made a good name with God. As we live, we make names for ourselves, good names or bad names. If we act wisely in God's eyes, we make a good name for ourselves with God, but it takes time. On the day of our birth, we have not lived long enough to make any kind of name at all. Furthermore, we are born under Adamic sin and die. Hence, if years later on the day of our death, we have made a good name with God, we have something that we did not possess on the day of our birth. We have a name that God will remember when he resurrects the dead to life under Christ's kingdom. I'll speak more about that resurrection hope we all have in a moment. So did our mother have a good name with God? Well, likely she did. Why? Well, we know she was by no means perfect. None of us are. However, she demonstrated and cultivated the qualities of patience, honesty, humility, industriousness, peacefulness, kindness, love, joy, goodness, faith, mildness, and self-control, as mentioned in Paul's words to the Galatian congregation in Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. When King David heard of the death of his son Absalom, he was grief-stricken, gave way to weeping, and exclaimed, "My son Absalom, my son Absalom. Oh, that I might have died I myself instead of you, Absalom, my son." Centuries earlier, when Abraham lost his beloved wife Sarah through death, he bewailed her and wept over her. Jesus Christ was also greatly grieved when his friend Lazarus died, for before going to the tomb to raise him from death, Jesus gave way to tears, as mentioned in John chapter 11, verse 35. So while there are various reasons for grief, death of a relative or close friend is certainly one cause of great, sometimes nearly overwhelming sorrow. So during this time of grief, many questions are likely to arise. Why do good people die? If we want an accurate and reliable answer, we have to look back to mankind's beginning in the Garden of Eden. Testing Adam's obedience, God there commanded him not to eat the fruit of a certain tree. If he and Eve ate of the fruit, God said that they would positively die. When tempted by Satan, however, they disobeyed God and failed in that crucial test. Death resulted. Why such a punishment for a seemingly small crime? Their action was small, but the crime was deadly serious. A rebellion by perfect people, Adam and Eve, against their Creator. They were no longer perfect, and God passed sentence of death. Yet God has arranged for that just sentence to be reversed for descendants of Adam. How? Well, we read of what Paul wrote in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 5 and 6, in part that Jesus Christ gave himself a corresponding ransom for all of us. So another question is, what is the condition of those who have died? Well, I mentioned earlier of the account of when Jesus had given way to tears over the death of his friend Lazarus. Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. If you had died but had really been alive in the spirit realm for 4 days and were resurrected, would you not want to tell others about that circumstance? But Lazarus said nothing about having been alive in some other realm. In fact, the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 9:5, as for the dead, they are conscious of nothing at all. Now consider the implications of that. Millions of people believe in a place called purgatory, though that word doesn't appear in the Bible. Many more believe that there is a fiery hell. However, you would not burn even an enemy in a fire for eternity. So if you would refuse to do these cruel things, would a loving Creator do so by making individuals suffer? But reflect, please, on the comforting Bible assurance mentioned above. The dead are conscious of nothing at all. This means that the dead cannot do anything, cannot feel anything. Their thoughts have simply ceased for a moment. Here is where realizing and reflecting on the resurrection hope for our mother and all of the loved ones that we've lost and ourselves is essential. See, the Apostle Paul was convinced and confident in the fact that at Acts chapter 24, verse 15, we read of a resurrection of both the righteous and the unrighteous. One does not usually experience prolonged sadness when a dear friend goes on a long journey, for we expect to see him again upon his return. Taking a somewhat similar view towards death of a loved one may help to potentially lessen that grief. See, death was never a part of Jehovah God's original purpose for mankind. The distress we feel over the loss of our loved ones and mom is the direct result of Adam's sin and Satan's evil schemes. As regards those resurrected to life, let's read a scripture that was a vision given to the Apostle John, recorded for us in the book of Revelation, chapter 21, verses 3 and 4, which reads, "With that I heard a loud voice from the throne say, 'Look, the tent of God is with mankind, and he will reside with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them.' And here's the key point. And God will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away." So think of our parents, our grandparents, and other ancestors who will return to life and progress to perfection along with their children and grandchildren. The effects of old age will simply be eradicated. Adversity will be gone, and with it, the emotional pain it causes. Poverty will not exist. Under God's kingdom that we pray about in Matthew chapter 6, verse 10, oppression and violence will be done away with on a global scale. Illness will never shatter the tranquility and happiness of families. Yes, a world without pain is indeed coming. A world where we have the opportunity to enjoy life again with our mother and our lost loved ones in perfect condition, happy and in peace. But how is this possible? When Jehovah God resurrects people, he will restore their memories and their personality traits that made them who they were. Just think of what that applies. Jehovah loves each of us so much that he's keeping track of all that we think, feel, say, and do. So when he had to resurrect you, he'd be easily able to restore your memories, attitude, and personality traits. Does that not draw you closer to God? Allow you to motivate you to love him and want to know more about him? Clearly, there is no greater honor, no higher aim than heeding the Apostle James' counsel to draw close to God. What is most interesting is that when we do so, our Creator will do something in return. It states at James chapter 4, verse 8, to draw close to God, and he will draw close to you. One of the principal ways to draw close to God is through prayer. We shouldn't underestimate that value. The Bible makes this comforting promise at Psalm chapter 34, verse 18, Jehovah is near to those that are broken at heart, and those who are crushed in spirit, he saves. Furthermore, Psalm 55:22 assures us to throw our burden upon Jehovah himself, and he himself will sustain you. Think about this. Many have found it helpful to talk about their feelings with a trusted friend. But would it not even be more helpful to pour out our feelings to the God who promises us that comfort to our heart? So it's beneficial for us to follow the example of the ancient Israelites and go to the house of mourning. Why? Well, our loss is mutual. We comfort and are comforted by each other. So at this time, if anyone would like to stand up and share their thoughts or feelings at this time, you are more than welcome to do so. Tilly. Here, come up here. I'll adjust the mic for you.
It's a beautiful morning, and a beautiful morning to celebrate life and death. And the joy that my great-grandma gave to me was endless. And I just wish that I was a little bit more close to her. Let's just think about the times that we had with her for a moment. The happy times, the times that she might have held on to us with a hand out. She was very beautiful. And it's a beautiful day to celebrate a beautiful woman.
Cindy.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Tilly. That was beautiful. It is a beautiful day. You know, we thought it was going to rain today, and the sun came out, and there's a breeze blowing. And it was a beautiful night last night. In the middle of the night, I was up with Honey BB, Mom's sweet puppy who, she named her Honey. She always said that it was because of the color of her fur. But she told me one time that the real reason that Honey is named Honey is because she always called her husband, our dad, Honey. And she said she didn't want people to think that she was crazy talking to Honey, in the house. And, I don't know if she made that up or if it was true or what, but I always think of that, Honey being, Mom called lots of people Honey, but especially Will. And Mom was, she was a unique lady. And I just was thinking last night about all the wonderful things about her, and the flowers that she loved were simple. You know, she loved the carnations, and she loved the, I think they were called pansies, little flowers, and in all the pretty colors, but purple was her favorite, and she was excited when Dad gave her a computer with a purple cover on it, and her just flowers. You know, she loved her flowery dresses, and she was so smart. Oh my goodness, this woman was smart. She and I went to college together. I had finished high school and moved out, and was working, and I had Sean, and I had been working at a bank, and I was bored with all of that. And she's like, "Well, why don't you go back to school?" And then she admitted to me that she had not finished high school because she got married and had my brother, my older brother, who has passed, and so she had to go get her GED. And then she and I just had such a wonderful relationship during that time. That was probably the most special time because we went to school together. And, I was good at the math stuff, and she was good at the English stuff. And she was good at keeping me on task with my work, and, so it was cool. I've missed her since she's moved to Alabama. I tried to see her as much as I could. Talked to her every day, almost every single day since Will passed in 2014. So, we're going to miss her. She loved all of you, every one of you that are here, in her own way. Ashton, she loved you so much. She talked about you and was so proud of you going to, your new school, graduating high school and going to the electrician's school. And Heidi, she would talk about, just how grateful she was that you were there for William, and that she, just that you were strong and, took care of the family. And Amanda, she was just amazed, by all the different things you did, like she was in awe of when you did the couponing, and she still to this day talked about it, or, the couponing and but when I was up there and Brittany from downstairs had the baby up, and Mom was just going on and on about how you were doing the baby wearing with Tilly, and made me get out the pictures and showing the cloth that you did, and and Elijah, she got to see you in your new cap uniform. She said how handsome you were, and just so proud of you for for doing something that was going to be strong and disciplined, and and Tilly, every time when I would pick you up in the car line, and lots of times Mom and I were, or great grandma, my mom, was on the phone because we would talk while I was sitting in the car line, and she was always so excited to hear about your day, and she would just listen, and she would tell me later how fun that was, just to hear how excited you were to jump in the car, and talking about all the things that happened at school, and proud of you for your new school, and how creative you are. And of course, William, you're her everything, you know. So proud of you with all you do with your congregation and with Ashton and Heidi and the house and your, my gosh, you know, highest, you know, chemist and all that fancy stuff that you do, you know. She was pretty proud. I'm pretty proud too. And Sean, of course, you know, her first great-grandson. Grandson. Right, not great-grandson, first grandson. And she was there when you were born. She was holding my hand. Your dad was on one side and she was on the other, holding my hands when you were born. And you were born on her mother's birthday. And all right, honey, I'll talk about you in a minute. I already talked about you. Anyway, she loved you so much, you know, and most recently talking about how you've stepped up since Dad was gone, and you and Amanda taking care of the company. And she would always say, well, I know it's in good hands. I don't, you know, don't tell me about it. She loved every one of you and me. It was hard most recently while she was so sick. You know, she was so sick. And it's unfortunate the way she went. But I know she's at peace. And it worked out the way God wanted it to work out. You know, it just is. It just is. Just like this beautiful day. It just is.
You want to say something? And Ashton. I remember my grandma and me always talking when I went to visit her. When Dad and Mom would go out to go shopping, I would stay behind with Grandma and chat her up, hang out with her. It was very fun. I remember we'd always talk about conspiracy theories or science and stuff like Dad would do. I remember this one time we talked about ice monopolizing the market and conspiracy theories and drinks and ice and how ice is a scam and all that. And it was just one of those long-winded conversations that we would have all the time. And I really am gonna miss that because we would always just have these wonderful conversations, and she gave the best, warmest hugs. And I'm gonna really just I'm gonna miss that so much. She had the most wonderful smile, and whenever I came to visit her, she would immediately roll out of the room with her wheelchair, and she would be like, Ashton. And we also, this one time, she was talking to me about me going to school for electrical, and she was talking about how she was very proud of me and how she looks forward to seeing how I was going to do. And she said, one of these days you're going to come to my house and you're going to fix something. And, well,
You almost fixed your face, brother.
I did.
There's still stuff there that needs fixed.
I'm going to figure out something to fix. I do know how, I've been learning how to fix outlets and stuff, so I'm going to fix something while I'm there. And I'm gonna miss her.
a lot, and I know that we're all are going to miss her, but I am going to miss her a lot, and she did so much for me. She always found a way to just do that one thing that would make my day, and I always liked talking to her when Dad was in the car. Like, Dad would be parked in the driveway, and he'd be talking to her, and I'd be knocking on the window, like, let me talk to her, let me talk to her, let me talk to her. He wanted his alone time with her, but I'm like, no, I want to join in, I want to join in. And that would just happen. And sometimes he would hang up and not give me the chance, or sometimes he'd let me in, or sometimes he'd just lock the door and tell me to go away. Either way, I'm going to miss her, and she was a wonderful woman and a great conspiracy theorist.
And Sean.
Hey, family. It is a beautiful day today. It's sad, and you hear the birds chirping in the background. When I think of Grandma, all I can think of is love. Just love, 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 love. And it was always that way. I remember we actually lived at Grandma's house for a little while. Long time ago, when you were searching for the house. I remember being there, and to put it into perspective for the kids, Grandma was like my gaga. She was the one that I would be dropped off at, when my parents were out, and she would always welcome me, like Ashton was saying. She'd go, Ashton, she'd go, Sean. And like you said, she gave the biggest, greatest hugs, always. And I remember being sad, and she said, it's okay to be sad, if my parents were leaving. I was really little. And she would wait for the sadness to subside, and I'd come creeping around the corner, and she'd usually greet me with a box of donuts. And, she let me wake up and eat donuts and watch Looney Tunes in her living room with Samson, her dog. And just lots of just wonderful, wholesome memories of Grandma. And she was just that Grandma, that loving, supporting. She always had my back. I remember when I was in middle school, I was going to Madeira Beach Middle School, and I hated it because I didn't know anybody there. And my mom was teaching at Tyrone Middle School, and I knew people there, and I really wanted to go there, and Mom was on the fence about it. And I remember that Grandma had my back on that. She just told Mom, just let him go, just make it work. And so Mom made it work, and that very first day at Tyrone Middle School, I met my future wife. So I really thank Grandma for having my back that time, because it changed my entire life. And I'm going to miss her a whole lot. And I just think that if you believe like I believe, that then we'll see her again. And I really like this passage in here. I don't know, are you going to read this, or can I read this? It says, Aloha means farewell to thee. Aloha means goodbye. It means until we meet again beneath a tropic sky. Aloha means good morning and always to be true. But the best thing that aloha means is I love you. No, it's just that, so aloha, Grandma.
And Amanda.
It's just amazing. It's amazing to be out here with you guys, to know, that, without Grandma, this beautiful, wonderful family wouldn't be a thing. I never, I did not receive love in the way that Beverly was able to give it. I never felt so much unconditional love. I never felt so valued, I don't think, in my life until Beverly came into my life, until you all came into my life. And I know that she taught us all how to do that for others, how to be kind and loving and patient and excited for others. I loved to tell her the things that were going on with me. It was so exciting to have somebody just be vibrantly excited for just whatever was going on, whatever the conditions, whatever the circumstance. She knew that everything was going to be okay because she believed in us. It was really a blessing, so wonderful, and I'm so grateful to have received the messages from her that God intended for me and for us to receive. And I'm so very grateful to be a part of this beautiful family that she loved and nourished. That's it.
And Heidi.
So, we all loved her. We know that. So, we're all going to miss her. And I always felt, when I first met her and William and I were just friends, she said, "Girl, I like you." And she said, "You're good for William. I hope you stick around." And I thought she was kind of just kidding, right? And so the next time that I saw her, I said, "Beverly, I do like you as well." And she said, "Well, you're going to learn that I mean what I say. I say what I mean. And let's make a deal." And I wasn't even going out with Will. We were just friends. And I said, "Good. I'm always going to tell you how I feel. And I'm going to believe you. And you're going to believe what I say. And I'm not going to mean anything else." And she kept her word. And I was always able to tell her, even when I disagreed with her, because as Cindy knows and William knows, she had some strong views about things. And sometimes you just had to agree to disagree with her. But she still loved you. And you knew that. And as all y'all have said, I'm going to miss her so much because, as everybody knows, she just loved to talk. She talked a lot. And sometimes I would be on the phone for hours, and then she would be like, "Oh, darling, I got to go. It's late over here," because, with the time difference. And I'd be like, "Oh, my gosh." So now I just got to have to do that to Cindy. We were on the phone, and she's like, "Oh, my gosh, it's 3:30. We got to go to bed." But, yeah. And so the one thing I did want to say is I've known her for 34 some years more. And I remember after I was going out with William and we had gotten married, she said that we were her other children and she was going to treat me like that. She loved Kevin, and she said, "You and Kevin, you're my other kids." And she loved him like a child. And I loved him like a brother as well, because she loved him, and Kevin loved her as well. And I knew then that we were going to be fine. Some of my friends did not like their mother-in-laws, and I was so fortunate that I did. I loved Nana, And I was like so stoked with Cindy, and I'm like, I just hit the lottery. And then Sean married Amanda, and it was just like, we had a lot of things in common. We like bargains and couponing. And as Brock will know, I even said, can we have a discount? It's just, and that's something that Beverly appreciated a lot about all of us. And so I knew that for her, Kevin and I were part of her children. And all of us were very, very special to her. And this, why I'm going to miss her so much, because her smile, her way, darling, how are you? How you doing? And when, William would be upset with Cindy or whatever, she'd be like, we got to be the voice of reason. It was just, she always tried to find a way to make sure that her family was always loved, felt loved, and we were all together. And so now we're left without her. And as Will said, and as Sean said, we know that we'll see her again. And I'm looking forward to that. And I just wanted to let you know that from the other children, and even though I'm sure that if Kevin was here, we would say the same, we appreciate that you took us into your family, and I appreciate having you as my family as well, because for many years, my only family here were you, because my family's always been abroad. And so, for Kevin and I, we thank you, and I'm sure that one day we'll all be together and kind of laugh about the beautiful day that we laid her to rest with the birds and all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren speaking. I think that it wouldn't be any better day for Beverly. So that's all. Thanks. Oh, well, and that would happen as well.
Well, I know that I've spoken quite a bit this morning, and it would not be uncommon if those that love me and know me the most know that I don't live my life anything but a man of just a few words. So I would like to go on. I thought that everybody had shared from their heart. I struggle to share from my heart right now because my heart is broken and it is contained as much as I can at this time, but I will try. I have to preface this with the fact that I am immensely grateful at this time for all of you. We, as a small group, are very, very tight. All of us have been an incredible source of strength in the past 2 weeks for each other, and we will continue to do so. I'm also grateful for so many people that knew and cared for my mother outside of this group. Admittedly, this is a very emotional and challenging time for us. I struggled to understand and accept the situation. I have not been successful. Losing her has been an overwhelming, painful experience that comes with a hurricane of emotions, processing, reflection, and my mind just simply wants to reject all of it. I don't know how to summarize and to speak to an entire life. There are so many intricacies. People are dynamic, and their relationship with the world is infinitely complex. We have only scratched the surface in each of our words when it comes to my mother. She was a unique human who was more than any of us can fully comprehend or speak to. I remember as a child, my father traveled for a living, and with my brother and sister being out of the house, it was often just my mother and I, just the two of us. We endured many challenges together, and our togetherness enabled us to navigate the constant change and to conquer those challenges. It gave us an invulnerable strength that strength endures, and it is with me today. In our time together, my mother taught me some of life's most important lessons, and she did so in a unique and very powerful way. Rarely, if ever, did she preach a specific message or compel me to act in a particular manner. Rather, we all know that Beverly inspired and influenced each of us through her actions, whether through her word, while her words were humble and very caring, in her actions, she was bold and she was powerful. And I'll speak about 3 lessons that my mother taught me that stick with me today. I think chances are very good they'll resound with all of you. The first lesson my mother taught me was the power of belief. During my entire life, she reiterated one thing: her absolute and unshakable belief in me. No matter the endeavor, she believed in me. She never questioned the things that I wanted or chose to do. She trusted and believed I would make the right decision and accomplish anything that I set my mind out to do. By believing in me with her full confidence and trust, she cultivated the belief within me that I could do anything. That belief is powerful. Yet many of us struggle with not believing in ourselves. We question our abilities. We think we aren't as intelligent or as skilled as other people. We say we aren't ready or we're not capable. Fortunately, I had my mother. And if you echo this sentiment, fortunately, you had my mother too, because she had the absolute belief. She had her full trust and support. When any of us would have failed, she would be there in a second to pick us up. When we achieved anything, she'd tell the entire world. She was immensely proud. She was a true believer and protector, the epitome of a pit bull mom. The second lesson my mother taught me was the power of compassion. Compassion has been defined as the awareness of a deep bond between yourself and all creatures, not just humans. My mother embodied this understanding of compassion. In our family, she was a very thoughtful and kind soul. By no means was she perfect, but many times she listened without judgment. She gave without expectation. She had an opinion, but she kept that reserved for a moment. She helped out because it was the right thing to do. She was honest because there was no other way for her to be. Growing up, money was tight at times, as my sister can remember, but my mother never complained about this. She would literally give you her last dollar, and for me, many times she did. She would sacrifice eating to make sure that we ate if it put smiles on our faces. I digress. There was one moment. My parents were having a very, very difficult Thanksgiving holiday, and she very politely asked Cindy and Kevin to take me and to ensure that I could salvage some sort of enjoyment out of a holiday. Without missing a beat, off we went. I never knew the circumstances. I never thought about the consequences. I had, albeit an odd Thanksgiving, but who of us have not had odd things? We've been in this family for a long time. It's not like it hasn't been filled with odd. But I digress. I never missed it. Even if she wasn't feeling well, my mom would write me a kind note in my lunchbox. She used to help me study with flashcards. She also showed this deep love to our dogs, Babe and Samson. She was the best mother that a dog could have. The Dalai Lama tells us if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. And my mom did just that, and I hope that we have the ability to do the same. The third lesson my mother taught me was the power of authenticity. My mother, she beat to her own drum. She was a very free and authentic spirit. She didn't stand behind the restrictive social walls we all like to build. If she wanted to say or do something, she did it. And instead of judging people, she sought to understand them. She loved colors. Not that you would know from the inside of her house, since she ascribed to all the shades of brown. But she wasn't also extremely religious, but had a very spiritual side to her. And she had a contagious laugh that was filled with unsettling amounts of joy. The author Seth Godin tells us that there are no real rules to make rules that work for you. It's hard for us to do this in practice. We're concerned with what other people think. We let social norms or feelings of difference discourage us. We choose comfort over courage. Fortunately, my mother taught me how to live authentically and be comfortable with that. She lived by her own rule, her own code. Because of her, I now embrace difference. I try to choose courage over comfort. So many of all of us glide past the petty frustrations of daily life, live the story that brings us immense joy and fulfillment, and spend our finite time with the people we love the most. I know my mom would support this approach. She never liked to see any of us down. So instead, I'm trying to choose to embrace life while I still have the opportunity to do so. I am choosing to celebrate her life and find inspiration in her teachings. I'm choosing to practice compassion, to believe, to live authentically. Of course, I'm going to miss her, and we all are going to miss her. How could we not? It's our mother, our grandmother, our great-grandmother. But I know she will always be with me. Her belief, compassion, and authenticity will always be my side and in my heart. For that, I am deeply grateful. And the last thing she said to me over the phone several days before entering the hospital was, "I love you with all my heart and soul, and I love you too, Mom. I will make you proud." In conclusion, I'd like to read a poem written by English author Henry Scott Holland. I have only slipped away into the next room. I am I, and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference in your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the trace of a shadow on it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same that it ever was. There is absolutely unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am waiting for you for an interval somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well. So we're profoundly glad that my mother lived. We are all glad that we saw her face and felt the glow of her friendship and love. We cherish the memory of her words and deeds and character, carrying her in our hearts. Let us now proceed from this place in comfort and in peace, assured that even in this time of loss and sorrow, life remains precious and good. Yes, you are more than welcome.
I just want to say a few more words. She was my great grandmother, and as the name, she was very great. And actually, she proceeded. I had these little crates that I would get sent every night, every month, and she proceeded to even get those to me when she was not even feeling good, which is an example of how beautiful and how great she was. As of this flower, she's like the gentle petals. She was very, very kind and nice and beautiful. As well, she loved flowers and the colors and everything, which was just so beautiful. And I feel like we all made such a great connection today with all the words that we spoke, and we all did a great job trying to touch everybody's heart. Thank you.
And Elijah.
I never really knew great grandma that much, but for seeing that everyone that made absolutely great memories of great grandma, I see how beautiful she was, and that the time that that I spent with her was the most wonderful time I've had. She was so sweet. She gave the absolute wonderful hugs ever. And I'm just glad to see that everyone did love her the way that I loved her as well. And it's unfortunate to see her go, but we have to move on and keep her in our hearts and remember her for being the sweet, kind, and absolutely smart great grandma that I remember her being.
May we also on this day rekindle in our hearts an appreciation for the gifts of life and other people. Let us honor the life of our dear mother by living ourselves more nobly and loving in the days ahead. As each of us return to the routines of our life, as hard as it will be, go in love, and may an abiding peace go with you.